Welcome to the Life of Words. My name is Professor David Morley, and we're going to start today with a very short poem by William Blake from his sequence, Songs of Innocence and Experience. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. To hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. As a piece of writing, Blake's poem is incredibly predictive of new physics, of our understanding of how our world, our natural world, was made. How it was created from something with the mass of the universe, and yet was as small as an apple upon any of these trees. And from that startling, astonishing origin, the world went on creating and recreating itself, not just geologically, but in terms of the shaping of species, of mountains, of oceans, and finally, at least for now, of us, the human species, a species whose language was the very reason that our development of our civilization came about. The leaps that we made towards the civilizations of which we now perform, they were leaps made out of language. Language was the absolute key to social connection between small groups of human beings and larger groups of groups around them. It's not a question about a common language, it's about things understood. The life of words is also the life of humans, and in that way it's also the life of a world. Words, sentences, languages, the words we find for everything around us, what we see and hear right here in Otmoor. These are a form of social coherence, a way of allowing us to speak to one another, to find understanding, and also to create an architecture of words through poems and stories. Poems are, in fact, stories. They had their origin in storytelling. The craft of poetry, as it's understood, this act of making, depended very largely upon mnemonics, rhyme, meter, alliteration. And why is that? Because there are ways of remembering quite complex stories in order to pass them on orally to other people. So words are not just a means of connecting, they're also a means of transforming and passing forward all over. And the way that languages deviate and adapt are all part of a kind of natural selection, if you like, of tongues and understandings. Again, a kind of social coherence. It's not unlike what I'm hearing around us right now, a reed warbler in the sedge to my right, marsh harriers moving over the grounds over there. Everything is in motion, and everything is in a very active communication using the language of sound, the sound of communication. In that sense too, poems and stories are like time machines. Languages change, words mutate. The way that, for instance, our species spoke English here in Middle England 1,000 years ago was quite different from how we speak it now. Not just in terms of accents or idioms or particular words, in the very timbre and tenor of how we communicated. The words were different. We might find them almost unrecognizable, were we to take a time machine and go back to Oxfordshire 1,000 years ago and open a conversation with a fellow human being. Words mutate, of course. Words adapt. Words are alive to pressure, to parlance. But the things that we can understand, the things that do move forwards through time alongside us, are those poems and those stories, those astonishing means for remembering what we are and what we can be, and importantly, for what we can imagine. When Blake says he can see a world in a grain of sand, and he can see heaven in a wildflower, and he can hold infinity in the palm of his hand, and eternity in an hour, eternity in 1 hour. In the blink of an eye, our species passes through the world and may well adapt and become something else. And our language passes through the world too. Our words are like genetic code that responds and alters. It seems very appropriate, given where I'm standing here in Oxfordshire, that we finish by reading a part of a poem by the poet Edward Thomas. And the poem is about words. It's principally about English words, but I think it applies to all language. Words. Out of us all that make rhymes, will you choose sometimes, as the winds use a crack in the wall or a drain, their joy or their pain to whistle through? Choose me, you English words. Before we continue with that poem, I'd like to invite you, as the writing game for today, to think about particular words that you value and use. I'd like you to really focus upon nouns in particular, not names, not verbs, nouns. And to begin to write a short story or a poem that focuses around that single noun. Maybe that noun is the title of the story. Maybe it's the title of the poem. Maybe it's the whole subject. But either way, that noun, that word, is the starting point. I'd be very happy for you to post some of your work below these videos as we move along through the series. And Edward Thomas continues. He says, I know you. You are light as dreams, tough as oak, precious as gold, as poppies and corn, or an old cloak. Sweet as our birds to the ear, as the burnet rose in the heat of midsummer. Strange as the races of dead and unborn, strange and sweet equally, and familiar to the eye as the dearest faces that a man knows, and as lost homes are, though older far than oldest you, as our hills are old, worn, new, again and again, young as our streams after rain, and as dear as the earth which you prove that we love. Thank you for watching The Life of Words, revealing the inner life of language through stories, through poems, and through writing across the world. If you'd like to see more of these episodes, please help by liking this channel and subscribing to the future episodes. Thank you so much. I'll be delighted to see you again as we continue the exploration of this world through words.